All right, today we're talking about my favorite deck in Silver Age, and if you know anything about me or seen any of my content on Silver Age, you know it's Blaze. Blaze is up there. Right behind Blaze is like Gravy and Dromai, and Riptide, but Blaze is number one. I've put a ton of time into this hero, both in Silver Age, but also in Blitz, the old Blitz format. She was fantastic. She came out in 2024, right around this time of year in 2024, and I played the heck out of her. So today I want to share with you what I've built and what I've continued to maintain and improve upon, even up to today, what I've changed about my own Blaze list. So let's get started with that. First things first, if you don't know what Blaze does, she essentially allows you to put opt counters on her hero card and then take off opt counters to throw spells at instant speed on your turn or your opponent's turn. And I'll let you read her along with the cards that kind of work around her. I assume that you know something about Blaze, and if you don't, I have like a lot of other videos, and I wrote an entire guide on the hero, which I will be adding to this week actually, because I've been working on some other article sections of that guide so that you can kind of understand where this list is going if the meta is indeed shifting to a more Guardian-centric answer to Briar. So let's talk about some of the changes. Just so you know, this is a very similar list to a lot of other lists out there, because in Silver Age, we don't have as much flexibility as we would in something like a Blitz, where you have all Majestics and Legendaries as well. That being said, I think this is rightfully so the list style that you should be taking the hero in, because I think it is just more consistently powerful than something like the other archetype, which is building up the sigils on the board and then sending a giant glyph overlay. That is a little bit more fragile, but it has a higher ceiling. So if you wanted to play that style, I guess I could make a video about that as well. Nevertheless, this is the version that a lot of people are playing with a couple of subtle tweaks. And the tweaks that I made to the deck, I made very specifically because of this card right here, Absorb and Aether. So if you don't know about Absorb and Aether, the Precon comes with the reds, if I remember correctly, and the reds are super solid, and it's more of a sideboard card that you kind of bring in sometimes. And if you do that, you'll be fine. But I think people don't realize the power of both the reds and the yellows with regards to how this deck can play them out, because these are representing 3 block value, or the reds are representing 4 block value, but the arcane damage buff means that you're netting 6 value out of this card if you play into it. And it fits nicely into our cost curve, pitching a blue and paying for this, I should say, because it leaves us 2 resources to play any of these other spells that cost 2. And we have a lot of cards now that cost 2 in this deck. So what can we do alongside of that? Well, you can throw Aether Spindle to get some opt for 6 because of the buff. And everyone should be on the blues. You throw a blue Aether Spindle, and it becomes a red Aether Spindle. So off of a simple block 3, you get extra damage. You get a nice little 2-card like 6, or a 2-card 7, depending on how you play it, 2-card 8. Right? Like if you play the red Absorb, pitching a blue, you get 4 block plus 2, that's 6 right there. And then you send a red Spindle, you're like at a 3-card 10, but it's through like dominated damage, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. That's not bad at all, and all off of a blue. So you should definitely consider the power of yellow and red absorbs. I bring these into almost every single matchup in the game. So that informs how I build the deck and how I go about playing the deck. And of course, we are on both blue and red spindles. We are on 4, not 6, just 4 Cinderings. The blues I'm not a big fan of because it's a blue block 2 that only gets you 1 counter. And there's better blues that we can play in the deck. We are on all Dampens. This card has been a new addition over the past 3 weeks, and Dampen has really overperformed, specifically the reds, but the blues I think have some use cases that we can dive into. Also do want to point this out that Dampen stops burn up shock effects. It is fantastic into the mirror or into any arcane matchup. Like it literally prevents all Icelander arcane that they can even deal, and it feels fantastic to just say, nope, I'm not taking your ice bolt because I dampened it. The blues are as good in some scenarios, and they're just fine in others. We are playing all copies of Emeritus Scolding because this card is nuts. Yes, you should play the yellows. The yellows are arguably better than the reds. No, actually, I'm just going to say it. The yellows are better than the reds. If you're not playing yellows, you're playing this deck incorrectly because the yellows are better than the reds. We naturally have at least 3 opt counters on the board, which means this is a turn 0 play that can deal 5 damage. You can even use the 1 extra floating for Absorb an Aether, so that you can send 7 damage on your opponent's turn 0 after they've kind of tapped out and shown you what they want to do or kept that card they want to keep for Arsenal. You say, here's 7. Card's nuts. Why aren't y'all playing it? You should be. Okay. Nucleus Aetherbolt is fantastic. Turn to Mindfire, also fantastic. A lot of this is going to be stock standard. We're still having to play Snapback because it's the best card that I don't like to play, but so be it. And then as far as the blues are concerned, we have Blue Whispers. Blue Foreboding Bolt. Everyone needs to be on Blue Foreboding Bolt. Card's really good. But like this main board is quite standard at this point. Outside of like people not playing Blue Aether Spindles, maybe not on the Dampen train yet, and then not playing Yellow Emeritus. Like those are the changes that I would make. Of course, then it's all about how to play the deck, and that is a big deal. And so I wrote an entire guide on that, and I'm continuing to, and I'll show you some gameplay after this. As far as the sideboard is concerned, this is where most of my changes over the past week have been made. I've been on Oasis instead of Polarity forever now at this point, and I don't think I'm going to go back to Polarity. I think Oasis is just better. I think 4 poppers has been my go-to since Blitz days. I played 4 poppers into all Dromai matchups, and I think that really does help the matchup a ton, having the ability to just sort of rest on 4 poppers and find damage. And we have more spells than ever that target any target, like Painful Premonition, Arcane Twining, Photon Splicing, Nucleus Aetherbolt targets any target, Turn to Mindfire targets any target, All Dampens target any target. We can now hit dragons more consistently, and we can target Thamai on our own turn more easily. Having these 4 poppers really does pay off a lot. Things that I've changed recently, I've added Voltic Bolt, Time Snap Potion, and Unflinching Foothold, and I took out Unyielding Grip. And this seems crazy. Okay, and in the game I'm about to show you after I finish talking about it, I played Unyielding Grip and I used it for 3 block, and it was fantastic. I just want to say this card is really good. It is fantastic, but I have found over the course of the past week or 2 that because we have this higher, conglomeration of 2 cost, 4 counter spells, like Red Aether Spindle, which we would love to play on turn 0, Red Dampen, which is just solid damage, Red Emeritus Scolding, Turn to Mindfire, which is technically a 5 counter card. We have more flexibility if we play Lens, Seeker's Mitts, and Seeker's Leggings and have them just on the board on turn 0. We can high roll a little bit more. We don't have to draw into any of these copies of Cindering in order to play these on turn 0. We can just hit the ground running faster. So I've been on Seeker's Mitts, and I haven't really, at this point, missed Unyielding Grip. I will continue to play with Seeker's Mitts to see if I feel like shifting back is better. But as of this moment, I am now on Seeker's Mitts in the main board, and I've dropped that card slot, which has opened up an extra Voltic Bolt, a Time Snap Potion, and an Unflinching. This Unflinching is kind of up in the air for me. It depends really on your local meta and if you expect to see Bravo Flattering Showman, and if you're terrified of that deck. Or if you're worried about Azalea, who can go really fast and just say, I don't care about your damage, then maybe you play Unflinching. I have it in the board because I just played against an Azalea last weekend, and we got there on the first game, and we missed it on the second game when we just played a friendly game back and forth. Unflinching could have been good there, so I figured I'd throw that in, and now we have the extra on-board opt slot with the gloves, so why not have that as an addition? Voltic Bolt is for fatigue decks, all those fatigue slop decks. Maybe we add another extra spell in there, and we can chuck some attacks in there, dropping the absorbs out of that matchup because they're not going to attack us very much, assuming. And then Time Snap is also for that, because I figured Time Snap is like a strict upgrade to a Mage Master Boots, because Mage Master only applies for non-attacks, so spells, you can double spell on a turn. But I can see a world where I would park like a Tongue-Tied in Arsenal after, like dropping a Time Snap on the board. By the way, Tongue-Tied, this card's so good. Like, it seems really good. I did not come up with this. I saw a bunch of other players playing it in their Blaze lists, and I was like, yeah, I'd give that a shot. This hits like a ton of things in Briar. If they Arsenal Press, if they Arsenal Burn Up Shock, right? If they Arsenal Polarity against you. This just says, no, you don't get to keep that. or you have to engage with the game with me. It's also good against some of those like guardians that want to drop those same things in. Like if you're worried that they're sitting on Oasis, sitting on Polarity, sitting on, like any of those types of cards, then you're forcing them to play it out against Tongue-Tied, which feels quite good. But Time Snap Potion, you play this down on the board, and then you have one of these attacks arsenaled. You could go off of 2 blues and another attack in hand. You could go Pop, Time Snap, Tongue-Tied, Fiendel's Fighting Spirit. So you go 7 into 7 physical damage. That's 14 physical damage on the board. One of them an on hit. Seems pretty solid. And then if you have a exactly Nucleus Aetherbolt in hand, you can drop 1 counter, banish Nucleus, and play Nucleus after that. So you could send like an 18 damage physical damage mixed with arcane damage turn. That's pretty solid. So I'm like cautiously optimistic at this. Theoretically, it seems like it could be good. And also it pays off to have a 19th blue in Wizard matchups. So I would definitely add that in a Wizard matchup, because that's what I used to do in Blitz. I would into Wizard matchups, I would straight up just drop a 19th blue into the deck, or like a 20th blue, and just have extra blues for AB3, which we do have AB3 thanks to the Wellingtons. We don't have AB4, so maybe this becomes your gloves, and then you just always win that matchup with the Oasis and an extra blue, and yeah, you're like super good. But this is the deck. Now let me show you a game that I played yesterday before I made a couple of these changes. That game does have me on Unyielding Grip, but the main board is relatively the same. All right, here's an example game that I played yesterday on Talishar. I was playing against a Bravo Flattering Showman, and it is at this point that I realized that I forgot to side in the Seeker's Mitts. And if you count the resources here, we have 5 resources available. And if we had Seeker's Mitts on the board, we would have 4 opt counters on the board, which would give us exactly the counters necessary to throw Emeritus Scolding, which means that we could have popped everything, absorb an Aether on that first attack, and then send Emeritus Scolding. We'd be left with no counters, no equipment, and we're kind of wide open to the draw, but we would have dealt, a million damage, which is pretty good. But this line of play also works great as well. Like we would have dealt, well, let's count it, 6, 8. We would have dealt 8 damage, and they would have floated a few resources, and we would have probably taken their arsenal. If not, then they would have just taken 6 damage that they had, and we would be at a life lead. Instead, this is actually a fine play for us because we have turn to Mindfire, and we're going to arsenal that Absorbent Aether. We don't Crucible here, so that we can play the Snapback. And the consideration to make a Ponder here feels negligible because Absorb is like a perfect arsenal target. But if we do end up finding like Cindering or a red Absorb off of the Ponder, off the top of our deck, then we have an argument to be made of maybe arsenaling that over yellow Absorb. And it looks like we were only a couple of cards away. So I tend to just aim for making the Ponder and seeing 1 extra card, as you should as well. We've forced cards out of our hands on our opponent's turn. We've dealt a little bit of damage, even through Oasis. We can expect maybe 1 more Oasis and 2 Polarities, but they are just going to swing Hammer. We are more than content to keep the Absorb in the arsenal, or to play it out here. Either of those lines would have been fine, but I'd rather play on my turn against a Guardian that wants to go relatively slow and wait for something better, particularly because we didn't have a play there that was too comfortable. Like we could have popped the Boots and then sent the blue the blue Photon Splicing for like 4 damage, but I don't think we want 4 damage. I think we'd much rather build up our counters in this manner, bottoming a 3rd Absorb, and find a card like Blue Emeritus Scolding, which is totally fine, and chuck that at them. Now there's better options as well, so we bottom the other blue alongside of it. They have Polarity, so be it. They are still at 20. We are at 14. But we have a ton of damage that we can throw at our opponent if we choose to do so right now. And if we don't, we can just follow this up, on our own turn. But instead, playing out the red Absorb from hand to cleanly block this, and floating 2 means that we can just send a, pretty chunky little bit here. We're going to Crucible as well, because we don't have a play on our turn. So we might as well use the blue in our hand, the excess blue, instead of just floating it onto the next turn. We might as well use it here for extra damage, and we end up pushing. It was 4 + 2 + 1, so a total of 7 damage. We have 3 counters still available on the board. We have 1 counter on our hero right now, and we have Emeritus Scolding Yellow and Absorb. So counting up how we would do this, we have 2 blues, and you can see I'm counting as well. They're just going to throw some attack. We are going to dump our hand here across the board. We are going to Seeker's Leggings, pitching 1 of the 2 blues. Turn to Mindfire is fine on top. We could honestly have bottomed that as well. And we will also need to pop the Talismanic Lens, which is not a perfect use of 0 counters or down to 0 counters, but having an extra counter, so be it, is fine. We are going to use all of our resources here, so we might as well block with Grip as well to get the extra block value off. And we're going to play the Absorb Yellow from Arsenal. You see that will cleanly cover things, and if they pummel us, it won't matter because we're going to drop our hand. Yellow Emeritus pitching here, and then we're going to pay for the Emeritus, floating the 1, and sending the snap back after so that the requisite damage goes through first. 5 damage plus the 3, asking for another blue from hand if they have it. Turns out it was a red, so we send an extra 2 damage, and then we completely cover that. Now, we have no more counters on the board. We know we have a red Cindering off the top of the deck in this next hand, alongside of a turn to Mindfire, but we can't play that. But thankfully, we draw one of the best cards in the deck. Nucleus Aetherbolt is a 1 counter card. We also have some Cinderings alongside of it. They are pitching the basically the entirety of their hand to chuck out this Thunderquake that was in the arsenal. Just a casual blue Thunderquake. Looks like they're reverting. Instead of flipping for Bravo Flattering Showman, they're just going to play the Thunderquake. Obviously, Bravo's effect would not apply on that Thunderquake, but I wasn't planning on blocking it too heavily anyway. The question you always have to ask is, what's their range? You know, like if they have a red pummel here, which we can kind of assume they don't, but if they do, their range is pretty paltry. So we kind of don't have to worry about it too much. Chucking a turn to Mindfire at our opponent might have, or I should say, putting it on the combat chain to block 2 might have been the play. But I think, if I remember correctly, I was thinking through this, and I'm thinking if I just play a Cindering, then Nucleus Aetherbolt, pitch the turn to Mindfire for Crucible, all on my turn, then I can use both of these Cinderings in a very functional way. We know that there's at least 1 blue in his hand right now, so we're not leaking a ton on his turn. But we can use the Cindering here to take the action point. We can play around with, you know, all of that bottoming, who cares? An Absorb in hand is great, and then keeping a blue is also great because we've seen a nice run of reds. Then we can Nucleus, you know, dropping the counter, dropping the 1 counter, and then we can Nucleus for this. And my thought was to Crucible here, that turn to Mindfire, but then I realized I can hold turn to Mindfire as my spell because I have double Cindering. I can park the second Cindering in Arsenal, and then I can send a chunky turn to Mindfire that is buffed by Cindering and also buffed by the Absorb that we put on top. So we just need that blue that we kept, plus the Spellfire Cloak here, and we can send another metric ton of damage, and that's exactly what we have here. We set ourselves up with a blue, plus Absorb, plus the turn to Mindfire from the previous turn cycle, which when I made the play a couple of turns ago, my first thought was that it was just going to get pitched, but then seeing an Absorb and then realizing that we're going to have an easy 6 counters no matter what we do, this was the correct play. Now, playing around something like Oasis and a blue in hand means that we would need to go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, something like that. We'd have to do 11 total damage, I think. So the game, if he has Oasis and a blue, Oasis in Arsenal and the blue, this game wouldn't be over at this point. We have some options here, though, because it would be nice to just send turn to Mindfire, but we're going to be dropping 5 counters to do that. So instead, we could just send Spindle with the buff, and that's exactly what we do. Now, if he doesn't have Oasis here, then we're sending this for a bunch as well, and we're going to pitch away the turn to Mindfire. So that, and there is the Oasis, yeah. Oh, but he pitches a red, okay. He's going to gain the life, and then he's going to have to deal with a chunk of damage here. 4 comes across, and he's now at 2. Oasis plus a blue would have been even better for him, but I like the turn of not sending turn to Mindfire, instead keeping the counter count high. And at this point, he's pitching a red right away. No, he's pitching a blue. Boulder drop. I'm going to use the Cindering Foresight yellow ability to see what's on top. Arrange it in such a way that we are going to draw if he somehow has like some way out of this. But with him being at 2 and AB3 only on the board, we have a lot of extra damage here. And that is going to deal more than enough to finish that game out. But that is an example of what it looks like to play this deck. So there you go, there you have it. That's my version of Blaze as I've been working on her in Silver Age. If you'd like to see more gameplay commentary, kind of like what you just watched right before this, let me know that down in a comment below. I would like to put that out. In fact, I want some tips or some ideas on how to make that overlay that you just saw back there even better so that I can put out some fun gameplay commentary on this hero or other heroes in Silver Age. If you'd like to see that, of course, make the number go to the other number. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching.